All right, we have some short words today. I am very happy because this is my first communion that I get to celebrate with you at this church, because they were often took place when I was recuperating or spending Christmas with my daughter. So this is my very first one, and I'm honored to do it. So I think it's special. So I have prepared something short, and because I forgot my reading glasses, we're going to see that I could read this 42-page thing correctly, all right? So here we go. If you were in a great storm on a sinking ship, certain to perish, but then someone guaranteed that they could save you for a price, if you were willing to pay their price, what would you be willing to pay? What would be worth to you to guarantee your safety? Or what would you be willing to pay for your salvation? To be saved eternally. If God theoretically said, you could pay X amount and I'll save you, what would you pay? What would you be willing? An even greater and more realistic question is, what was God willing to pay to save you and me from the sinking ship of this world? Our salvation is free to us, but it cost God how much? The greatest price. The life of who? The life of his Son. A man once ordered some food at a Burger King drive-thru, and the total only came to $4.33. However, when he handed the cashier his debit card, she absent-mindedly punched in the numbers, then punched them in again without erasing the original ones, creating a new total of $4,334.33. Well, the only problem was the man signed that slip without looking, and the charge went through to his checking account, and it virtually left him penniless. The newspapers got hold of the story and billed the incident as the most expensive meal in history. Well, of course, dining out in New York City or Honolulu could easily top that. But what's significant is that no matter the highest tab anyone has ever rang up at some restaurant, the most expensive meal in history is actually the very one we're remembering today. Amen? That's the most expensive one. For it was paid at the greatest cost with the death of God's Son. And the truth is, if we had to pay the price for this meal ourselves, it would literally leave us with how much? Nothing. We just couldn't do enough to pay for that. And that's why 1 John 3:16 says, hereby perceive we the love of God, because he laid down his life for us. Maybe some of you will remember a story that really has stayed with me for several years now, about the 22-year-old Korean girl whose story of sacrifice made international headlines back in 2014. I wonder if anyone remembers this. After the death of her father, Park Ji-young dropped out of college to help support her family by taking a job with the ferry company. She was eventually promoted up and up, bigger boats, landed on a boat called the Seawol. It's a Korean word, Sewol. And on this particular day, she was working on the Seawol, carrying hundreds of passengers, most of them high school students, on a class trip to a nearby resort island called Jeju Island. It's like the Hawaii of their country. But due to multiple causes of negligence and overloading and emptying the water ballast, making it unbalanced, dereliction of duty, the ferry sank, killing over 300 of the 476 people on board. 300 of them or so, 250 to 300 were actually students. Most of the crew went on to be prosecuted. The captain is serving a life sentence. Others got a decade and more. They were all arrested at first, but the amount of negligence and dereliction of duty was so amazing that actually the president of Korea eventually lost her office, in large part due to the scandals resulting from the cover-ups and everything from this sinking of this ferry. Well, Park Ji-young's story is quite different than how the crew abandoned the ship. The captain, he's one of the first ones off abandoning the ship, and all the first officers. As the stricken ferry began to sink, Park Ji-young helped passengers escape, distributed life jackets, and when she ran out of jackets, she ran to the next floor to grab more. And remember, this boat is tipping more and more, it's capsizing. And when asked why she wasn't wearing a life jacket herself, Park replied that crew members would be last and that she had to help others first. But hardly anyone else acted that way. Also, her quick thinking and keen assessment of the situation also led many to safety. In an interview CNN had with survivors later on, they recounted how the severe listing of the ship nearly immediately turned walls into floors. Passengers were panicked and disoriented. A large open door now created a gaping hole, and it was too wide for passengers to cross safely. Well, one crew member was lying on the floor nearby, grasping a mic, telling passengers that all would be well if they just stayed put right where they were. But Park instinctively knew that staying put was not an option. So witnesses say she grabbed some keys from that crewman and forced the door shut, then locked it to be sure it stayed that way. She then led nearly 50 desperate passengers across it, creating, as one passenger described, a bridge to safety. She was standing, here's the incredible thing, she was standing right by the exit, yet she refused to save herself, insisting the needs of the passengers came first. Alongside the flowers at her memorial is a simple message: we will always remember your sacrifice. Jesus is our bridge to safety. Amen? He's our bridge. And while the whole world and the enemy of our souls was saying, stay put, nothing to worry about, all will be fine, Jesus realized the dire situation we were in and took action. He knew that staying put in our separation from God was not an option. So he gave his life to close the gap between us and God. Like Park Ji-young, he put himself last in order to save as many as possible. just as the survivors will always remember the sacrifice of Park Ji-young, we are called to perpetually remember Jesus' sacrifice each and every time we gather at the Lord's table to observe communion. At this time, we will separate for foot washing. The Adventist Church invites everyone who was willing and able to participate. As you exit the sanctuary, there are people there to guide you to the right rooms. And I believe when you come back, you are to sit in the row that's marked. Is that right, Brian? If it's marked, please sit in that row so we could serve you more efficiently. God bless you and be with you as we continue to keep this most expensive sacrifice and meal that we'll enjoy together soon to come.